Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Talk Musicals to Me, a fun theatre podcast about musicals and their impact on people. My name is Caroline Sheen and I'm here to quiz some of the leading creatives in the entertainment industry about their relationship with musical theatre and how certain musicals may have influenced their lives in ways you may not even expect. From how they first encountered a musical to musicals they may never even have seen, let's dive in and introduce today's guest to open up and talk musicals to me. Hello and welcome to my 30th podcast episode. Talk Musicals to Me is 30 episodes old today, and in order to celebrate, I thought I would do something very special and get my most special, top of the bucket list, amazing guest to come on the podcast. I asked him right at the start when the idea germinated. He's a multi-Oscar and Grammy-winning composer and lyricist, and he is the reason that I created this podcast, because in March 2020, about a week or two before the world went into lockdown, I interviewed this fabulous person at JW3. It was my first ever kind of big deal interviewing evening, and it was an evening with me and this person. You're going to know who it is. You've clicked, haven't you? You've clicked on it. But let me just tease you a little bit more because I'm enjoying myself. He's the top of my bucket list. He was the most fascinating guest in that interview. And when I did that interview after, I was absolutely buzzing, and I just wanted to find a way to keep that feeling and keep that as part of my life. And that's where the idea for this podcast came about. And a few years later, I met Aaron, who then created the podcast with me. And here we are, 30 episodes in, with top of my bucket list, incredibly busy man, composer, lyricist, creative musical theatre legend extraordinaire. The reason he hasn't been on before now is because he's been busy making a movie of one of his musicals, making two movies of one of his musicals. And if you didn't see the name when you clicked on the episode, you're going to have guessed it from that. It is the wonderful, the fabulous, the fantastic, can't believe I'm saying this, Stephen SCHWARTZ, here to talk musicals to me. Welcome to Talk Musicals to Me, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, Caroline. I'm very well. Nice to be seeing you. Have you told folks how we know each other? How we got to be friends and colleagues?
I haven't yet.
I think you should.
Well, it was such a treat. I always call it the best job I never had. The best role I never played. That's the one. We met on the really wonderful workshop developmental phase of your musical Schickeneater. And it was so exciting for me because I was working with you, I was working with Trevor Nunn, I was working with a wonderful bunch of people. We got to workshop this fantastic show that was always going to be translated into German and put on in Vienna, but you wrote it in English and we workshopped it in English. We would do 1 week in London, 1 week in Vienna of Act 1, and then we would do the same for Act 2. So we did like the whole 6 weeks over a year of this fantastic project. And honestly, it's one of the best times I've ever had workshopping anything. And then I came out to see it and absolutely loved it and really hope there's a future life for it. It's not called Schickeneater anymore, is it, Stephen? It's something else.
No, now it's called Making Magic. It was only called Schickeneater in Vienna because people actually know what, or more specifically, who that is.
Yes.
He's the librettist for the Magic Flute. But when you're not in Vienna and you hear Schickeneater, it sounds like someone who's doing something obscene with poultry or something. So the title definitely has to change if there's going to be some kind of international life for it. And who knows, it may see its way back into English at some point, because you were wonderful in the workshop.
Oh,
yeah, wonderful.
I loved every second of it. And it's a fantastic show. The cast recording is out there on Spotify in German.
In German.
You'll be able to hear this wonderful music. But the music is fabulous. And because it's about the couple, the impresario couple who put the magic flute on with Mozart, Mozart. And similarly to Wicked, Mozart, like Dorothy, we don't really see him, we hear about him, but you have this wonderfully Mozart influenced score and this fantastic story set in, gosh, I don't even know the dates, forgive me the dates, in the life of Mozart. And the comedy between these two fabulous characters is very sort of Kiss Me Kate. They hate each other, they love each other, they jump into bed with lots of different people.
I was going to say, yeah, it's sort of Kiss Me Kate meets Mozart.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And thank you so much for such a great time on it.
It was really fun. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was great.
Oh, I loved it. And it was wonderful to then interview you. You were over in London just before Prince of Egypt opened.
Right.
And I loved talking to you about your life and your career. And like I said, it kind of gave me the itch really to do something like this again. And that's what I've done with this podcast. And what I thought would be an interesting angle is to talk about the other musicals that have influenced you. Hence these 10 questions that I ask everybody about the first musical they saw, what musical would they put on a school curriculum, etc., etc. Shall we jump in with that?
We shall jump in.
How did you first meet musical theatre? What was the first musical you ever saw or experienced?
Well, the first musical I ever saw will be one that nobody has heard of, because when I was growing up on Long Island in the suburbs of New York City, we lived next door to a composer. His name was George Kleinsinger, and he had written a couple of successful, what we would now call concept albums. He wrote one that was sort of a children's guide to the orchestra called Tubby the Tuba, which was enormously popular.
Fabulous.
Then he had written one called Archie and Mehitabel, which was a story about, I'm not making this up, a cockroach who used to write for the New Yorker, but was hopelessly in love with an alley cat named Mehitabel. This concept album was very successful, and so it was being made into a Broadway musical around the time that we got to know George. And my parents and I would go over to his house, and he would play songs that he was working on for the show. And I'm told, though I don't remember this because I was too young at the time, that I then would go over to his piano and pick out the tune of what he had played or sing it or something. Anyway, at some point, he suggested to my parents that maybe they should get a piano and get me some piano lessons. And so that's really how that all began for me.
Wow.
And then a couple of years later, when it played briefly on Broadway, my parents took me to see it. It was called Shinbone Alley. It starred Eddie Bracken as Archie and Eartha Kitt as Mehitabel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my fate was sealed the moment that I saw it. What's somewhat amusing about it is that it received not great reviews from critics who wondered why anyone would want to go and see a lot of singing and dancing cats. Demonstrates the importance of timing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And now they're watching cats that are voguing, right? The Jellicle Ball.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but I hear it's really great. So I'm looking forward to it.
My Instagram feed is full of it. It looks incredible. And so you were bitten by the bug then, like watching it, and
yeah.
In as much as you knew you wanted to write them? Or did you want to just be involved in some way?
I knew I wanted to be a composer.
Oh, wow.
So, at first I was taking classical piano and writing little classical pieces, etc. But I would keep sort of playing hooky from practicing my Beethoven sonatas to write little songs for puppet shows that my sister and I would do and coerce the neighborhood kids into being part of, or shows that we would put on in the picnic table in the backyard. It's, not that unusual a story.
Yeah.
But yes, I was never interested in being a performer. I always wanted to be a composer, and because of George and Shinbone Alley, and then my parents started taking me to see a bunch of other shows, for my birthday or for Christmas. That would be my present. We'd go to see a musical. And yeah, I just knew if I could, that was where I wanted my life to be.
I'm so glad that you lived next door to that man. If you didn't live there, who knows what might have happened to you?
I don't know. I might have been Paul Simon. Who knows?
Not such a bad option either, really.
No, except, yeah, well, I don't have that talent for those sorts of lyrics, so maybe I wouldn't have been Paul Simon. But yeah, I might have gone more into pop, which is what most of the songwriters of my generation did.
Were any of them like contemporaries of yours, Stephen? Did you have like friends who did that, who went into the pop world?
Well, people that I met later on, once I had become, more successful. And in fact, like Paul Simon and Billy Joel and people like that. But it wasn't as if I knew them when I was growing up.
You weren't in class with them or anything?
I was definitely not. Even though Billy Joel was from Long Island, I was not in class with him.
So my second question, Stephen, is what was the first musical you were personally involved with?
There are sort of three answers to this question, depending upon how professionally you mean it.
I have time for all three. If you do, then I do.
Okay, all right. Well, after, starting to take piano lessons when I was in second grade and writing all these little, puppet shows and picnic table shows, I wrote a musical when I was in high school that, I was hoping my high school would present, which ultimately they did not, though some people sang some songs from it. But it was called Wagging Their Tails Behind Them. And oddly enough, the leading character was a misunderstood witch.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and it was sort of a mashup of a bunch of different fairy tales, a little bit like Into the Woods.
Okay.
So, Into the Woods came, I don't know, half a century later or something like that.
You got there first.
I got there first, yeah. So that never saw the light of day. But then when I went to university, I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and I was a drama major there, but there was a club, an extracurricular club, that put on an original musical every year. And I signed up my freshman year and was fortunate enough to be able to co-write the show all 4 years that I was there. The first one that actually got produced and seen by an audience was a show called What's Her Face that I wrote my freshman year in college, and my co-writer was a young woman whose name at the time was Iris Ratner, but she became Iris Rayner Dart, who wrote, among other things, Beaches, which is right now playing on Broadway as a musical.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Iris did some of the writing for that. But this was, when we were 16 and 17 years old and at university. And that was kind of a story about a cleaning lady who becomes a famous model, like, a Carol Burnett, Barbara Streisand-y kind of character. And then the third year at school, a friend of mine and I wrote a show called Pippin Pippin, which was the genesis for, obviously, what became Pippin, although by the time Pippin got to Broadway, it had completely transformed. So that could count. But my first professional show was Godspell, and that happened shortly after I had graduated from Carnegie Mellon. I had been auditioning the score for Pippin around New York, and a couple of producers who were not particularly interested in that show, but had come across a version of Godspell being done off Broadway, in the UK would be called fringe, very fringe theater, and thought it had commercial possibilities but needed a score, and got in touch with me. But when I went to see Godspell, it turned out that everybody in it was from Carnegie Mellon. And they'd started working on this after I had left school, but, some of them were kids that I had known at school. But anyway, that was my first professional show.
Isn't it mad how things turn out? I love the idea. I don't know if it happens anymore, but I know this was your story, is that you say you auditioned scores around New York, but that's literally what you would do. You'd go into a room and play your score for producers, right?
Yep, exactly right. Sit at the piano and tell them the story and play some songs and sing some songs. And yeah, exactly right.
Gosh, that must be nerve-wracking. That must be quite a terrifying thing to do.
It was nerve-wracking, yeah. And then when I was actually doing shows professionally, you would do backers auditions.
Right.
And that's exactly how you would do it. I remember we didn't have all the financing for Pippin, and the producer, Stuart Ostro, took me to meet with gentlemen from the Schubert organization. And I sat in a room and played some songs for Pippin, and, fortunately, they chipped in to get the show on.
That's really great to know, because I think sometimes when you go in as a performer, you go in to audition and you think, does anybody in this panel know what it's like to audition? But actually, the writers probably do. The pitch and the audition, and you have a feeling of how that is.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know when I was on the other side of the desk, so to speak, and I was, when I first came to New York and I would play for other people's auditions.
Oh, right.
We would have the same suspicion. We'd like, no one's listening and no one cares, and they've already made up their minds before you walk into the room. But that's really, really not true.
No.
I'm here to reassure people who are performers that when you come into audition, everybody for whom you're auditioning wants you to do as well as you possibly can.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah, we're trying to find the best possible person. And the other thing I think to know is that all you can do is be the best version of you. And sometimes you will be a good fit for that particular role, and sometimes you won't. But you can't take that personally, because sometimes it's just like, well, she's not tall enough, or she's too young, or whatever, I mean, it can have a lot to do with stuff that's completely beyond your control.
Yeah, I always say, if you feel like you did a good audition, then that's all you can do. Like you say, if you're right for it, somebody else even more right might have walked in straight after you. The only thing in your control is go in and be the best you can possibly be. And thank you for backing that up. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't second guess yourself. Don't try to think what they might want. Just go in and you do you. That's the best way to go about it, I think.
Bring your option to the table. I actually listened back to our interview from 2020 earlier on today, and you mentioned how you were a drama major at Carnegie Mellon and how that influenced you then as a writer to write for what actors need. I found that was really interesting.
Yeah, I'm a terrible actor myself. I'm extremely self-conscious and can't close down the famous third eye from watching myself. But I was actually a directing major at Carnegie Mellon because that was the broadest field in terms of being able to take every aspect of theater if you were a directing major. But among the things that one had to take was acting. And I took 4 years of acting. And even though I couldn't really do it myself, I came to learn what actors need from the material in order to be given the best chance to perform it. And that has greatly influenced how I write. So I do try to write as if I am acting the role.
That's so great. And I think it's so important, like you say, that you got such a broad spectrum of what theatre is in your training, through doing that. And I think sometimes that's a great thing, to tell somebody, go and work the lights on a show, go and do sound, go and do costume, find out what everything is, because it'll only enhance what you bring to what you end up doing.
Yeah, I think that's really true. All of it feeds together and you bring it to whatever you're specializing in. You bring those skills.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to go on to my next question now.
All right, now we'll actually do your questions.
Which musical have you seen most often? Obviously, I know you'll have seen your own shows loads. Is there a show you're like a fanboy of? Have you seen something more than you've seen others?
There are a few of them for different reasons. When Funny Girl first played, I saw that 3 times.
Oh.
I went to see it twice with Barbra Streisand because I was so amazed by that performance. And
Wow.
I also loved the show. And so I went back and saw it with her replacement. I did the show in summer stock as a director. And, then I saw the most recent production. But, there are several shows that I've seen in many different iterations and many different productions. The other show that I saw multiple times in its original production was A Chorus Line.
Oh, yeah.
So that was very influential on me.
All right.
Yeah, I saw that maybe 4 times during its original run.
Wow.
But I've seen multiple productions of Fiddler on the Roof and De Vita and, sort of classic musicals I've seen many times. Most recently, I saw this new production of Chess.
Oh, yeah.
Chess is one of my favorite scores of all time. So every time it was playing in some version or other, I would go to see it. So I've seen many different incarnations of Chess, always with that fantastic score.
I've spoken about Chess a few times on this show, and it's my favorite show to play in the car.
Yeah.
It's a really great driving soundtrack. I'll be there belting my head off to all the roles.
Sing at the top of your lungs, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
No one can hear me, but I'm having the time of my life. So what was it about Chorus Line that spoke to you then, Steve? What impacted you with that?
First of all, I loved that it was true,
Mm-hmm.
that it was a documentary, and the idea of doing a documentary musical musical was kind of revelatory to me. I had seen there was a show off Broadway in the 70s called The Me Nobody Knows, which was also kind of based on letters and things that kids had written. But the way Chorus Line was put together, how dance was used, and just the skill of that show and the truth of it, I found very impactful. Just a few years later, I put together the show Working, which I wrote some of the songs for, but recruited some other songwriters as well. And, I think that was inspired by the existence of Chorus Line.
Yeah. And the funny girl thing, I read Streisand's autobiography, and I find it mad to me that was the last time she ever appeared on Broadway to date. She stopped, she went to Hollywood and never did a Broadway show again. And she'd only done maybe 2. I think she'd done that and I Can Get It For You Wholesale.
Yeah.
But when you saw her, was there that star quality? Did she blow you away?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an absolutely amazing performance.
Wow.
And I had actually gone to see her in I Can Get It For You Wholesale because I was watching, late night TV one night, and she came on and did her number from I Can Get It For You Wholesale. And the next day I was in the city because I was supposed to go to music school because I was going to Juilliard at the time while I was in high school, but I cut school. And I went and got myself a balcony ticket.
Did you?
Yeah, to go see I Can Get It For You Wholesale, to see this amazing singer and performer. And yeah, it's too bad she didn't do more theater because she had an extraordinary gift for that.
Yeah.
And she's a very big personality, in some ways. Sometimes I think maybe a little too big for the screen, but she was amazing on stage and incredibly funny. I think people don't really know what a superb comedian she was.
Oh, I really wish I had seen her do that. So, Stephen, my next question is, which musical made you laugh the most and which made you cry the most?
Well, I think for laugh, it would be 2. One is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Great.
Which is really funny. Very, very cleverly put together. And The Producers, the original production of The Producers, I thought was pretty hilarious. So I think maybe those 2 were the funniest.
I think it's like the 25th birthday of The Producers, like this week or something like that. I've seen some stuff online saying happy 25th to The Producers. I can't believe it's 25 years since that opened. That feels like so recent.
I know. I was going to say a very recent show, The Producers. Yeah.
Definitely more recent than Forum.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then for cry, I would cite my favorite musical, which is The King and I. And yeah, the ending of The King and I never ceases to get me. But there are several moments that I just think are so beautiful in that show. A lot of it has to do with how beautiful Richard Rodgers' music is. But the intro to Hello Young Lovers, which I think is the best musical intro ever, that will get me. And Something Wonderful will always get me. And then the ending. So, yeah.
And is that, because I know you mentioned that in the last interview, how influential that show is on you. Is that something you remember seeing for the first time? And was that Broadway? Where did you see that?
My parents had the cast album from Broadway.
Right.
So I knew the album, but I was too young to see it on Broadway. So I didn't see it till I saw it for the first time until I saw it on film.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I came to know it very well, and I've seen subsequent revivals of the show.
It's also a really good film of a musical, isn't it? And that's really hard to do. I think you guys nailed it with Wicked, by the way.
Thank you.
But I think in those days, sometimes stage musicals, especially Rodgers and Hammerstein ones, obviously excluding Sound of Music, but it didn't always work great on the big screen.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't seen King and I probably since I originally saw it. Saw it a couple of times then, so I don't know how it would hold up. But my memory of it is that it was extremely well done and had Gil Brynner reprising his performance, which doesn't always work, but in this case obviously did. And then I guess Deborah Carr didn't really sing, but kind of, I guess, really neither did Gertrude Lawrence, so it didn't really matter.
Was that another Marnie Nixon job? Was she Deborah Carr in that?
Oh, Deborah Carr? You know what? I don't know that. Could be.
I know she did a few, didn't she?
She did quite a few.
Incredible, really. Oh, that's wonderful. I remember what you said about The King and I. I just listened to it today, and how it influenced you having 2 major characters who were both right, but at odds with each other, and also both wrong.
Exactly. And that it's a love story, but it's not romantic romantic love. They don't even touch except for one time when they do the polka, but it's such a beautiful love story.
Oh my God. And that moment though,
I know.
that moment when he puts his hand on her waist.
He puts his hand on her waist.
The whole audience goes,
I know.
And that's all it is.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So yeah, King and I greatly influenced Wicked, among other things. But I like when characters aren't like all good or all bad or all right or all wrong. And, they're clashing for, each thinks, he or she has a really good reason.
Yeah. It's also one of my dream roles. It's one of my bucket list roles to play because I am from a civilized land called Wales, which is where I'm coming to you from today.
Yeah. Anna Leonowen, I think her real name.
Anna Leonowen, yeah. And I think she's potentially the only Welsh heroine.
That's a good role for you.
Let's put it out there, Stephen. Let it happen. Let's get it.
Absolutely. Now that you've said that out loud, that's actually a really good role for you.
I would love it. And I would do her full Welsh. She'd be the Welshest Anna you've ever seen. So we're coming to the last question of the first half of the podcast. And it's my confession question. And even after a year of doing this podcast, I still haven't put it right in that I have never seen a professional production of West Side Story, which I regret greatly.
As well you should.
I should know. I should be ashamed. I am ashamed.
No, you should just regret it because when it's really well done and, danced well, it's great. It's a fantastic show. Yeah.
So is there a musical out there that you haven't seen that you feel like you probably should have?
Well, I've since seen it, but I did not see the original production of Sweeney Todd. And I really regret that. It was a period of time, there was a few years where, for various reasons, I actually wasn't going to the theater at all. And it happened right around the time Sweeney Todd was first playing on Broadway. So I didn't actually see Sweeney Todd, which I think is a masterpiece, and the first act of which I think is about as perfect as a show can be. I saw a video that had been made of the original production, and not even with the original cast, with the LA cast. And since that time, I've seen a bunch of productions of it, but I'm really sorry not to have seen that kind of definitive first production.
It's interesting you talk about that, Stephen, because when we spoke before, you mentioned how you went out to LA and you even considered, I think you were training to be a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or something. You've had, for all your huge successes, you've had real highs and lows, haven't you? And I think it's really important that people know it's not all easy on that road to Oz. There are trials and tribulations. And I love the fact that you went, well, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should retrain.
Yeah, I actually have done that twice.
Oh, really?
I got burnt out. The first time was, in fact, in the 70s when Sweeney Todd first came out, and then, I guess, late 70s or early 80s. Yeah, and I was very, very burned out, and I just took some time off. Didn't pursue another career at that time, but my kids were young, so, I spent a lot of time with them, and then kind of got going again. But then, the second time was in the early 90s. I did think maybe I'm done now with this aspect of my life. And I did go back to school and start taking classes to become a therapist, a mental health counselor.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed a lot. And
by the age of 26, you had 3 shows on Broadway. And that is incredibly young to think about that now.
Yeah.
That age to have that huge amount of success. And then how do you follow that up after that? You can't keep going like that because, like you say, you will burn out. You will have to take some kind of steps to save your sanity.
Yeah, that was exactly the case. I mean, no one likes to hear anyone complain about the difficulties of being successful, but it has its challenges. And particularly, I think, for someone as young as I was and very, very unprepared in many ways, emotionally and psychologically. And then, I had a very difficult time with the original production of The Baker's Wife, which oddly enough has now turned into, a triumph 50 years later, but it took 50 years for that to happen.
Is that happening right now?
No, there was a limited run production off Broadway this past season, which was extremely successful. And because of that, it may come back again in a more extended run.
And that's the version we had in London?
It's almost exactly the version that was at the Chocolate Factory.
Fantastic.
So a couple of little tweaks, but basically that production, yeah.
It's so lovely, isn't it? It must be really nice for you to kind of revisit things. We've just done out-of-town tryouts for a new musical, and we're now on a little break before we go into London. I have no idea what changes lie ahead, but I do know we've been workshopping it for 2 years. And at some point, you just can't see the wood for the trees. But I guess coming back to it 20, 30 years later, maybe that distance helps.
It helps enormously. Yeah. I mean, I've had a few experiences with shows that did not work their first time out, but then with some time and coming to understand also what aspect didn't work and therefore what needed to be fixed, I've been able to, with my collaborators on each show, make those changes, and the shows have ultimately become successful. Yeah, but that's always quite a journey.
Yeah. So for people out there who are kind of feeling creatively stuck or burnt out, what advice would you give to them?
That's a good question. I mean, I have good advice if you're actively working and, kind of hit a writer's block, etc. So I can give that advice, which is basically not to be the editor too soon. If you're experiencing writer's block, it's usually because you're writing something and then judging it immediately and getting in the way of the part of you that is the writer by being the editor too early. And you just have to allow yourself to be the writer and do maybe not the best work, and then go and pick out what's best and eliminate what doesn't work and build from there. But if the editor shows up too early, then you don't get anything done at all.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to writer's block. The answer to burnout, that's a different issue. And I think that's something personally, everybody just has to deal with on his or her own.
Yeah.
How to find again the joy and the motivation that had you want to do this in the first place. And sometimes, the world is too much with us. Sometimes it's just hard to silence the outside voices and get back to what you fell in love with.
Yeah. I like it when every now and then I email you and I get an automatic response back saying, Stephen is in writer's hibernation. I love that.
A writer hibernation.
Yeah. And that's it. You're just shutting the world out and doing your job.
Yeah, because otherwise you can't get the writing done. Yeah.
It's a great way of describing it. Thank you, Stephen. Let's have a short break and come back for the second half.
All right.
Thank you. Did you know there is another musical theatre podcast out there that not only chats all things musical and theatre and backgrounds, anecdotes, fun chat, etc., but also decides to investigate the guests' thrash metal tastes as well? Thrash and Treasure is a great fun listen and a really different podcast to tickle your eardrums. If you like your musical theatre creative guests, you'll get Duncan Shake of Spring Awakening, Joe DiPietro from Sinatra, Mortby and Shire, Chris Gattelli, David Zippel, David Yazbek. You'll also get your Broadway stars such as Andrew Keenan Bolger, James Monroe Eichelhart, Mary Tester, Julia Murney and Michael Cerveris. And of course, there are British legends, including Melanie LeBarry, Diane Pilkington, Sinita, Hadley Fraser, David Thaxton and Michael Gibson. And because it's an Aussie-grown pod, you'll also have your pick of Aussie's finest, including Tony Sheldon, Pippa Grandison, Sharon Millichip and Simon Burke. Produced, hosted and created by my fabulous producer and editor, Aaron Ware. You must have a listen to Thrash and Treasure. Make it your next musical theatre podcast stop. Get listening now wherever you get your podcasts. Hello and welcome back to the second part of Talk Musicals to Me with Stephen Schwartz, the whole reason for this podcast even existing. Thank you so much for coming back for part 2, Stephen.
Yeah, here we are again. No, always good to see you and talk with you.
Here we are again. So my first question of part 2 is, if you were running a school or a college and you had to put a musical on that everyone in the school had to be involved with, which musical would you do?
Okay, this is an answer I'm cheating on because I'm going to pick one of mine.
That's allowed.
Okay, good. As long as it's allowed. I'm going to pick Working.
Okay.
Which frequently actually is done in schools. And what's good about it, particularly if it's kids maybe, what we call lower school in America, but even high school kids, because they research the jobs, they go out and do field trips and talk to people who are working in these jobs. Sometimes they conduct their own interviews. There's a whole curriculum that can be built about this.
Wow.
And I think the arts in general help to create and build empathy, which is what I think is maybe the thing most lacking in our contemporary world.
Yeah.
And Working obviously is a show about empathy, about putting yourself in the shoes of another person and looking at life and what they do for a living through their eyes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very good project for schools, not just because of the research component, but because of how much it helps to bolster empathy for other people.
It'd be like a careers lesson, a whole term of working on different careers and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking of it, could this be my career?
No.
You're thinking of it in terms of how does this person live? What is his or her life? And what are the challenges that they face that maybe I've never thought of? What are the things involved with what they do that I was always just taken for granted when I come in contact with someone who's being a waitress or a parking lot attendant or whatever.
Yeah. You're walking a mile in their shoes in that show.
That's exactly right. To me, that's a valuable thing to be part of a curriculum.
I think that's fantastic. And I think you're absolutely allowed to choose that show. Even though it's yours, I will let you.
I tried to think of another musical that I thought should be in curriculum, and I didn't really come up with anything. Well, maybe 1776 for Americans, because it humanizes the American Revolution and the people who were writing the Declaration of Independence, and you see them as real people and not just, these statues.
Surprisingly, that's not done very often over here. I don't know why.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I can't think why. Speaking of shows that aren't done very often, which forgotten musical would you like to see revived?
Well, I can think of two.
Okay.
One, I would be very interested to see Shinbone Alley, the first show that I ever saw and thought was so wonderful, to see just how wonderful it was. Or maybe the critics who didn't care for it were right. I don't know what the show actually is, so I'd love to see that. And then a show that's always fascinated me is Arthur Lawrence and Stephen Sondheim's Anyone Can Whistle.
Oh, yeah.
Which ran a very brief time on Broadway. I think it ran about a week and then closed. But it has some amazing songs in it, and it's a wild plot. And I would be very interested to see that, even if it doesn't work at all. I'd be very interested to see a production of that. I know it was done in concert here a few years back at Encores, and I wasn't around to see it then. But I think I'd actually like to see a production of it, if anyone would have the guts to do it.
Yeah, they actually did it here in a theatre you know well, the Bridewell.
Oh, yeah.
A few years ago now, I think probably about 15, 16 years ago. And it's a literally crazy plot. There's some kind of asylum thing in there.
Yeah, and people are getting out of the asylum and you don't know who's crazy and who's not. And
yeah,
there's a long musical number, literally 12 minutes long, I think, called Simple, that I remember being so dazzled by the lyrics when I heard the cast album, when I was a kid. Maybe I was in high school. And I just remember being so blown away by the brilliance of those lyrics. And it's got some tunes that have lived on now, in concert form. So anyway, that's one I'd be very interested to see a production of.
And Shinbone Alley, have I said that right? Or is it Chin or Shin?
Shin, S-H-I-N.
Shinbone Alley.
Shinbone, yeah.
You said he did concept recordings and stuff. So is there a recording of that, like an audio recording?
Well, there was a quite successful album, but you're talking about the 1950s, so who knows? The album is called Archie and Mehitabel.
Oh, okay.
The show was called Shinbone Alley, but it was adapted from this album.
And was it literally like a load of cats on stage dancing?
Yeah, kind of very famous dancers. Jacques D'Amboise, who, became a very well-known dancer and whose children are celebrated dancers. His daughter Charlotte was in the revival of Pippin.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it apparently had really great choreography, etc. But I don't know, I don't know if the plot was stupid or just people weren't ready for dancing cats.
Not for a few more years. That's definitely one I would like to see revived. And I think with Anyone Can Whistle, I have a feeling do you think in future years, much as I think lots of people have already done their own thing with the Sondheim show, I feel like there is going to be like this kind of retrospective bunch of shows done to sort of celebrate all his shows, not just just his hit shows, you know, like how Merrily has come back from almost the dead, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was absolutely laughed off stage when it first opened, and now is this huge hit show. Maybe that could happen with Anyone Can Whistle.
I think Merrily, first of all, intrinsically, it was a better show, probably.
Yeah.
Not as crazed. And also, you know, they went through a lot of revisions and different versions of Merrily until they finally arrived at one that succeeded. But there were a lot of tries at Merrily. I saw several versions of it along the way.
Yeah. There was a really great one here in the early 2000s at the Donmar, where it was it started with the Hills of Tomorrow. So it started with a class that were graduating, and then the characters from that class played all the characters in the show. So they were always young. I think that's the difficult thing, isn't it? To get people who can play all the age groups.
The original production did that too.
Right. Okay.
And one of the things that I think was successful about the most recent production, and Maria Friedman's take on it, was that she cast people who were the right age for the end of the show.
Yeah.
And then by the time they got young, you know, you were like, oh yeah, right, they're playing young. But they were able to bring the kind of nuance and complexity that the characters needed at the end of their story.
At the beginning end.
Right, at the beginning end, right.
Yeah. It must be a really nice show to be in, because you get all the crap out at the beginning of the show, and by the end you end up with these hopeful, young, happy things.
Right.
And so you come out of it on a high rather than coming out of it going, I feel so drained.
Right. If you ran that show linearly and in reverse, everybody would just come out and like slit their wrists at the end of the show.
Yeah, they'd just be devastated by the end. There's some great answers. Thank you, Stephen. Is there any musical which inspired you to make a strong choice in your life?
I did see that question, and I don't have a great answer in the way that I've had people reach out to me, you know, over the years and say, you know, when I heard Defying Gravity, it gave me the courage to do thus and so.
Yeah.
Or, you know, my wife and I were having difficulties in our marriage, and we went to see Pippin, and then we talked afterwards and we're giving it another try. You know, like where a piece of art has directly impacted an individual in their actual life. I can't say that I've had that experience with any musical, but I will say that two musicals that influenced me as an artist, I mean, we've already talked about King and I, and we've already talked about A Chorus Line, but the other one I would mention is Gypsy, which I saw the original production of Gypsy.
Oh, wow.
When I was maybe 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old.
Wow.
And I remember my parents taking me to see it. And afterwards I said to them, that is the best musical I have ever seen. And they were like, oh, that's so cute. And I was like, no, you're not hearing me. This is the best musical. I still think it's certainly one of the 5 best musicals ever written, in my opinion. And it was very influential on me just in so many ways, in terms of its structure, in terms of the complexity of the leading character, the way musical motifs were used in it, you know, in so many ways, it really changed what I came to realize a musical could be if you were able to do it really well.
Wow. Would you have seen like Ethel Merman and that whole original?
I saw Ethel Merman.
Wow.
I did. Yeah.
How was that?
Obviously, it was amazing, since I said.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
I sometimes wish I grew up in America. You get to see Streisand and Merman and doing all.
Well, you have to be my age.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you know, I saw Julie Andrews' last performance in My Fair Lady.
Oh my gosh.
I was very young then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw the original West Side Story.
Wow.
Speaking of West Side Story, with the original Jerome Robbins choreography. I don't think I saw the original cast, but I saw the original production.
So your parents really supported you going into the city and watching shows?
Yeah, well, they were theater goers.
Great.
I mean, neither of them were remotely in the arts, but they were theater goers and concert goers. We had a lot of cast recordings. And then, when I became smitten with musical theater, they were very supportive. As I said, they used to take me a couple of times a year. And when I knew that that's what I wanted to do, they didn't discourage me and tell me I should be trying to get a real job instead. They always supported, my love of musical theater and my wanting to make that my profession.
That's really wonderful. That's really, really wonderful. And interestingly, what you said before about how your music has affected people, people and how people have written to you going, yeah, I didn't get a divorce because we went to your show and we made it work. On Tom Schumacher's interview with me, we spoke, I think it was possibly this question or maybe a different one. And he was having a hard time out in LA, I think, when he was first started working for Disney and stuff like that. And he had his Pippin recording in the car. And if he was having a difficult time, he'd put on It's Time to Start Living and it would boost him and it would get him through the day.
Wow. See, I did not know that at all. Tom has never told me that to my face. So
there you go.
Thank you.
I think he actually said, I don't think I've ever actually told Stephen this.
He never has. No, that's lovely.
So yeah. And then how much of Gypsy's impact on you is because it's about the theatre industry? It's about entertaining people.
Sure. I think that is part of it. And, it maybe was like the 8th show I ever saw. I saw it very early in my theater going career, so to speak. It's Jerome Robbins staging. So the staging was so phenomenal. I can still close my eyes and see the moment where the young newsboys grow up with the strobe light. I mean, I just had never, I didn't know you could do that live.
So clever.
It's like seeing a great magician. So yes, I think part of it was the theatricality. Part of it was that it was about performers and people who wanted to be in vaudeville, but what was then musical theater.
Yeah.
But I think also the complexity of the characters and the relationships, that it's essentially a mother-daughter story. And I'm very interested in parent-child stories. I write a lot of kind of father-son stories. So yeah, I think there was a whole combination. And then just its sheer excellence, I think, on every level, musically, lyrically, staging, the efficiency and yet depth of the book. Just seeing something so well done, I think, was very inspiring.
Absolutely. Bearing all that in mind, what would you say is the secret to a good musical?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it is the material itself. The combination of characters that you care about and can identify with, good storytelling, and then told in a theatrical way. And then it helps when there's really good music.
Yeah.
There is something about the alchemy of musical theater that you really don't get anywhere else. I think with opera, one is a little too removed. There's a little bit too much artificiality in most opera, but musical theater just can get it on this pre-conscious, visceral level when it's really firing on all cylinders, and then it just stays inside you. But, I think people, particularly people who don't know that much about musical theater, tend to think of it in terms of, tap dancing and razzmatazz.
Jazz hands. Yeah.
But for me, you can tell really deep, complex, emotional stories through the medium of musical theater. And because of the music and because of the theatrical impact, it can stay inside you forever.
Yeah, it lives, doesn't it? It lives in you. I think is the story you read Wicked on, or you heard about Wicked on a boat on a holiday or something?
I heard a friend of mine was reading the book and she basically told me the title and what we would call a log line.
Yeah.
She said, I'm reading this book, it's called Wicked, and it's really the Oz story from the Wicked Witch's point of view. That's what I knew about it.
And then did you just go, oh?
Yes, exactly. Totally.
Did you have this like sort of ping go, like eureka?
Yes. I mean, it still kind of happens, like all the hairs on my arm and in my neck, just stood up. I was like, oh my God, that's just the best idea ever. And so then I was fortunate enough with some persuasion to ultimately get the rights to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seemed like the best idea I'd ever heard.
Oh, it's difficult to imagine some musicals on film. And then when I saw the first film of Wicked, I couldn't believe everything I sort of wanted it to be. It was and more. Are you just like the happiest person in the world with those movies?
Well, they were a really great experience.
Yeah.
Most of this is credit to John Chu, the director, who really understood how to make that world on screen, and also was, particularly for a movie director, very collaborative with me and with Winnie in terms of the story, in terms of how the music was presented, etc. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like he came up with, when you put the two movies together, something that just will live forever.
Oh, absolutely.
And just full marks to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And then when I saw you pop up, I literally went, oh, I was so thrilled.
Well, that was John also. He told me he wanted me to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really fun and a very interesting experience because it was quite difficult, actually. I found it very difficult. I was like, oh my God, movie acting is really hard.
In what way?
Well, because you come out and you're like, you have to hit a mark and you pretend to see something that's not actually there and respond to it. And you say words and you make a gesture, but you have to be careful that your arm is the right height, that it's not too high or too low within the camera. And while you're doing this, a gigantic camera, big metal thing is coming at your head and it looks like it's going to hit you in the head, but you can't dart a glance at it to make sure it's not going to hit you in the head. And all this is going on while you're trying to act. So I don't know. It gave me a great, renewed, increased respect for movie actors.
Oh my God. And what that cast did with those roles, I think, obviously it must be quite intimidating because Idina and Kristen still have such an imprint on those parts. For the two of them to recreate those roles in their own way and for it to work so beautifully was absolute magic. I think the casting of that was phenomenal. How was that?
Well, again, obviously in the end, everything was John Chu's final decision, but we were very involved in the casting of all the principal roles and, saw screen tests of various people, etc. And, there was much discussion before the final decisions were made.
It was absolute magic. I know it's about magic, but it was magical. I loved every second of it. Has it given you a taste for more movies of your shows? There's one of Godspell, right?
Yeah, a long, long time ago, there was a Godspell movie. They keep talking about a Pippin. I hear about this all the time, but no one has ever quite solved how to translate the theatricality of Pippin to the screen.
Yeah.
Movie musicals are tough because when people break into song, it can seem very weird.
Yes.
One of the things that I think made us pretty confident that Wicked could work from the beginning is that it's set in a fantasy world where we already know they sing because we saw them sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow and Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. So we know they can sing there.
Yeah.
I think it's much harder when you're trying to do Dear Evan Hansen or even now West Side Story, a world where it's strange when people sing in a very, very naturalistic environment. This is all by way of saying not all stage musicals lend themselves to film, but Pippin is kind of fantastical, so I could definitely see that could work if someone could figure out the equivalent of breaking the fourth wall.
I think it's also that thing of, because like you say, you've got the camera right there. Usually when you sing, you have to project. Like I know when you do TV, you don't have to do much with your voice because you're not projecting. You don't have to hit the back row of the stalls or anything. But to sing, you automatically have to have this support and this projection that just makes it, you're singing a note rather than speaking. And so it automatically is heightened.
Exactly.
Because it's unnatural.
Yeah, there's an artificiality, and film is a very naturalistic medium.
Yeah.
The whole point of film is to make you believe you actually are on Mars. So if you're in a very real, familiar, quotidian setting and suddenly people are breaking into song, that's really tricky. Then you need a concept like Rob Marshall's brilliant concept on Chicago.
Yes.
Making it clear that everything was happening in the characters' minds. You need to justify why they're singing.
Yeah.
Basically, just for starters.
I know this isn't one of my questions at all. Is there a film musical, apart from Wicked, that you think ticks all the boxes? There
are several of them. I mentioned Chicago. I'm a big fan of the film musical of Little Shop of Horrors. I'm a big fan of Hair. I mean, actually, I thought John Chu did really well within the Heights, because he found a way to take a naturalistic setting, but stylize it right from the very beginning. So for me, I know that film wasn't that successful at the box office, but I thought it was very successful artistically. I think when the director has figured out justifying people singing, then there are classics like My Fair Lady, etc., which are a category.
They're almost a different genre, aren't they? The sort of golden oldies.
Yeah.
There's a great story. I actually said this on a really early podcast. I was interviewing John Weidman. I read, I think, during the publicity for the first Wicked movie that John M. Chu loved Pacific Overtures and that he'd been in it as a child. And there's actually a video of it on YouTube. You can see him singing in it. I just think that's absolutely fascinating and wonderful. That's what I loved about the movie, was that you could tell it was somebody who loved musicals and respected musicals utmostly.
Oh, yeah. One of John's student films, I think it was at USC, was a musical.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's always had a great affinity for musicals, but he also gets music and how to use music. He understands how to cut songs. I mean, edit. He knows when to cut the camera, when to hold. He has a very rhythmic sense of editing, but not so much so that it feels artificial. He's just very skilled.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you found him for those movies. Absolutely thrilled.
Me too.
And this is a rule breaker one, and you are allowed to choose one of your own musicals for this one. Which musical feeds your soul? If you're having a down day, if you need to feel better about something, which musical do you put on the record player? Which one do you go and see?
Oh, well, I mean, for me, in terms of feeling better, I would not be listening to one of my own shows. You know, we talked about earlier how much we like listening to the score to chess. It really does make you feel better to just belt out Nobody's Side.
Absolutely.
Or Pity the Child. Those two are really fun to sing in the car. There are notes that I can't even begin to approach hitting in Pity the Child, but I don't care. I just love singing that. I mean, for me, of my musicals, I would say Children of Eden is the one that resonates most for me. And, you know, if I'm going to go back and kind of sit at the piano and just kind of play something of my own, you know, or feel better, you know, it could be Stranger to the Rain or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say just in terms of another show to listen to and feel good, Chess has so many good songs to sing along with.
So when you next come over to the UK, can we get in a car and sing Chess together?
And sing together? Okay, absolutely. That would be really fun. All right, that's a deal.
Stranger to the Rain got me my first job. I think I might have told you that before, but if you've forgotten, I'm going to remind you that that was my audition song for Grease.
Oh, great. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people sing it now. I feel like when I sang it, it was undiscovered. I don't think you had done the big revival of it in the US and the music wasn't out in books and things. And I think you'd done a special print of the music for Dress Circle and I'd managed to get it. And so I was like the only person in college who had that music and I was very proud of myself. So that was my song.
I'm delighted to hear it and I'm glad that it paid off for you.
It did. I think I sang it for a few auditions. I think it might have got me Mamma Mia as well. So, you know, you've done me well. Thank you, Stephen.
All right. I'm delighted to hear that.
And also, Children of Eden comes up quite a lot on the revival question. There's quite a few people out there that want a revival. Can you help us with that?
You know, there's always a lot of talk about it. It's complicated because it requires this big chorus. And so there are economic challenges to doing it in a full professional, you know, first class production. But yeah, I'm still hoping that that will happen. And it's definitely possible. People talk to me about it all the time. So
yeah, it's a fantastic, absolutely fantastic score. And like West Side Story, I have never seen it done. So that needs to be sorted out. So if you can do that for me, thank you very much.
All right. We need to fix that then. Definitely.
Thank you so much, first of all, for coming on the podcast today. And
yeah, this was fun.
Being so open and wonderfully entertaining. What's next for you? When I Googled Stephen Schwartz news earlier on, it said there potentially might be a Glinda musical happening or a Glinda film happening.
I think that's a false rumor, but there is a movie idea that Winnie and I are working on with a writer who brought the idea to us named George Makrinos, which is kind of in the Wicked world, but not a sequel.
Oh, okay.
Based on another Frank Baum book. And right now we're calling it Ozma.
Oh.
And we're in the process of developing it. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But it's a really good story.
When you start writing something, are you writing it for the stage?
No, this is definitely for film.
Great.
Yeah.
that require a different sort of mindset when you write for film?
Yeah, to some extent. There are less songs, and you have to be aware that there's a camera, and, so you can't just stand and sing for 3 minutes, just stand in the middle of the stage and sing.
I heard a phrase the other day called park and bark. Have you heard that?
Park and bark. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what opera singers do.
Is that what they do? I love that.
That's unfair, but that's the rap on opera. But the now contemporary opera singers with contemporary opera directors don't park and bark so much anymore.
Oh, that's fantastic. And anything else? Is that your next project, or is there other things happening?
It's one that I know is in development. There are a couple of other things that are in early stages that I don't feel I can talk about yet, but we'll see.
I laughed earlier. I was watching our interview back, and at the end of the interview, you get our audience questions, and they're asking you about all these different projects, and you literally just go, I can't talk about that. And I can't talk about that. It's just like, nope, I can't talk about that.
Oh, one thing I can say, if people are interested in the score for Queen of Versailles, that cast album just came out.
Oh, wonderful.
You can stream it, I guess, now, Spotify or whatever. And then the hard copy for anyone who actually still wants a CD comes out, I think, next month.
Oh, great. Well, I will be doing that later on today. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on and making my day. It has been so wonderful to talk to you.
That was really fun. Thank you.
Wow, my 30th episode of Talk Musicals to Me with the amazing Stephen Schwartz. I am honestly so grateful to him for coming on. I'm always grateful to all my guests for coming on. And I'm so grateful to you guys for listening. If you get a chance, please have a look at his website. It's incredible. I had to go on there to find his photograph for my poster and promo materials for the show, and it's absolutely fantastic. There's so much information about all his shows. You can find sheet music on there. You can ask for sheet music that you can't find anywhere else. Just jump on there. It's an absolute treasure trove. And while you're on the internet, can you leave me a lovely review as well? That would be really great. And tell your friends about this. I'm having such a fab time doing it, and I don't want to stop. I'm having the best time. So tune in soon for episode 31. And thank you so much for listening today. This has been Talk Musicals to Me for the Bloop Network. My fabulous producer is Aaron Ware, and the music you heard is from the pen of the sublime Tom Self. If you get a moment, please subscribe or follow and rate the podcast by clicking the stars below on the podcast page. It takes about 2 seconds to do, and it will really help the podcast and its future life, and would make us massively, eternally, enormously grateful. In the meantime, another huge thanks for tuning in, and please do so again next time to see who will be next up to Talk Musicals to Me.